Customs and traditional beliefs previously detested exhuming of the remains of the dead, but as time changed, the rights of the dead have been violated. Routine land disputes, love for quick money from the sale of property, have struck a compromise to violate the rights of the dead by illegally evicting their remains.
Tatange bamusigudde bajjajja basenga.
Person who has since been buried can be exhumed. However, the law requires that you have to get a court order. People exhume for different reasons. Some because they have sold the land, some because they are fulfilling the deceased person's wishes. Because before a person dies, the person can express how they wish to be buried and where. Usually in a will. Our law only recognizes a will. So if there is a valid will, it means that that will has to be fulfilled to the letter. That means that the person's wishes should be fulfilled. If a person is buried in a particular place and it's later found out that their will require them to be buried in a different place, you can exhume, or others exhume because their issues have arisen as to the ownership of the land and they need to bury it in a different place. Other people exhume for medical reasons, or investigations. Maybe they want to pick a sample of the DNA. Maybe there is a dispute as to the death, what led to the death of the person, and they are required to do another post-mortem. So that one, it's usually a police letter. Police or the magistrate can, whom they call, especially if it's about circumstances disputing a person's death, the magistrate will order police to exhume, and the magistrate supervises, and that case is called a coroner, and supervises that exhumation. Or if it's for DNA purposes, still court will write to police, and police conducts that in the presence of all parties, and when there is a court guidance. So in any case, there should be some bit of authority knowing. Police should be aware, under any circumstances, police should be aware to avoid unnecessary disputes that may arise in exhumation.
Despite champions of exhuming remains of the dead illegally, the law stipulates procedure one has to go through during and after exhuming the remains of the dead.
So you are required to apply to court, and usually this is an ex parte application, and court gives an order allowing, and you give reasons why you would wish to transfer. Usually if there are parties who are disputing, because there are circumstances where there's a side which wants to exhume, another side doesn't want to exhume, then court can hear the reasons given and court grants the order. Many times there are no disputes and court just gives the order ex parte for you to transfer. The whole reason why you are required to go to court is because to avoid disputes that may arise in exhuming a person. Because some people may sell the land without the knowledge of other family members or other beneficiaries, and they exhume and then they do it illegally or outside the law. And that's what happens when some family members are not aware that a person is going to be exhumed. So, but if there is no dispute, court will grant the order.
Sometimes the law requires one to notify the local leaders where the exhuming is taking place and where the remains are to be relocated.
Serves that order onto the area police, the area local council officials, and usually the RDC. That is usually by matter of practice. It's not the law, but by matter of practice, just for the sake of maintaining peace and harmony. Many people don't get orders. They do it outside the law. They only inform maybe the LCs or the police, and they do it in the middle of the night. But that is illegal. Only that sometimes there are no parties who are disputing, and they will let it pass. But you are supposed to require to get a court order before exhuming a person.
Some people exhume the remains of the deceased, basing their views on customs and traditions.
Sometimes there's a tendency to have religious or cultural practices take precedence. That maybe in this tribe or in this clan we bury like this, or in this clan we bury like this, or in this religion do this. However, religion and cultural practice take second place to the law. The first place is what does the law say, because the law, our constitution puts the written law above any other custom or religion if they are inconsistent or if they clash. So the religious and cultural practice will only come in if they don't clash with what the law says.
Recently, over 40 remains of the dead were illegally exhumed in Nakasajja Champisi Mukono district, leaving many in shock.
Nebuuza kiki ne ndowooza nti oba bakaanyiza ne famire kuba ebijja babisengula bulijjo naye ate bugenze okwetooloola ng'ate ensanga abamu bakomyewo nga beekalakasi tebamanyi bantu baabwe gye babatutte.
Ntegeerezaawo muganda wange n'ankubira essimu n'agamba nti ng'abakadde baabasiguddewo ne ntegeezaako bannange ng'ebijja byonna nga mbiraba bino nga baabisimyesimye zino twasigaza mpompogoma zokka.
Entaana eyo gy'olaba ya jjajjange azaala kitange Omulangira Thomas Goloba nje bamututte
eddoboozi mpitibwa Omumbejja Nasorest nga nzaalibwa omugenzi Mulangira Lumaama John abadde yaziikibwa naye buli omu alaba ku zzansanze ali omu ku famire yasengudde bajjajja ne bakitaffe naye tukusaba bwe baba babaleese eyo sayidi zeewammwe mutuyambe mukulu Lutamaguzi tuyambe.
Ngamba oyo Sugundi Juliet zansanze ne mwanyina wasajja bannange mbasaba busabi banyambe bambuulire taata wange gye bamutadde bannyinaze baganda bange ne bajjajjange bonna nze sibalinaako mutawaana n'ogumu.
There is no exhumation which can take place without knowledge of the relatives. And that is why there is reason for having a court order, because the court process is supposed to guide. Court can even give how that exhumation should take place. And of course the intention is to inform all the parties who are concerned, because it shouldn't, if the exhumation takes place without the knowledge of the relatives or the people who stay on that land, then that means that there was a process which was skipped, because the purpose of the court process is to ensure that all parties are aware. In fact, if there are any disputes, the other parties who don't want the exhumation to take place can object in court, and court hears the reasons and before granting the order. So usually if it happens in such a manner like the one you're quoting, it means that there was a process which was skipped. Chances are that there was no court order, or if it was there, possibly all parties were not aware of the court process. Because if there is a court process, all the parties in the matter should be aware and should know that this is going to take place because court granted the order. If any party objects, then it can always appeal to a higher court to stay the removal of the remains pending the decision of that court. So chances are that either people apply to court quietly or they didn't even go to court, because it happens many times where people sell land, some parts of the family sell the land, maybe even administrators, without all the beneficiaries knowing, when this land has a burial ground and then all the family members are not aware. That's why it is important that before court grants the order, it would even have been prudent for court to visit the ground, to visit the locus, to ascertain, because a person might misrepresent that I'm moving 3 bodies when it's a burial ground of more than 4 families, such that all the families have a chance to appear in court before court grants the order.
Police arrested one Juliet Zansanze.
Wedde twafuna okwemulugunya kuva mu b'enganda abamu nga balumiriza muganda waabwe okugenda maaso n'okuziikula abafu. Funa alipoota eno twakubira omuntu ono gwe balumiriza nategeeza nga byabadde alina ekiwandiiko kya kkooti okukola ekikolwa kino. So situlindiridde kyakufuna kopi y'ekiwandiiko kya kkooti eno naye nga twaguddewo general inquiry file nga kwotadde n'okumanya ekikola kino yakikola ku wiikendi oba yakikola ku nnaku ezikolebwamu. Tuli mu kwetegereza bintu bino era kituyinza obbategeezaako nti kaweefube aliwo wakukakasa court order neeri.
Person does that without a court order or even without the consent of the family members, you can be charged criminally. You can be charged under the penal code and you can be sentenced to up to 3 years imprisonment. The other issue is there is also an offence under the Succession Act of intermeddling with the estate of a deceased person. That is, if you don't have any authority and then you start possibly interfering or removing the remains, and you don't have the authority of the administrators, or you don't even have letters, you can also be charged with that offence, because it can also be a criminal offence. So yes, a person can be criminally charged. But on the other hand, if there are also disputes regarding the ownership of the land, the first important thing is to know who owns this land where the deceased person is being removed. Because you will find that the person was buried in my land and was wrongly buried on my land. So I would have every reason to transfer that person. However, you still need to apply to court such that you get you convince court of the reasons and court grants the order of you moving that person's remains. No bar, there is no minimum or maximum time that a person can be transferred. Like I mentioned, if a person is deceased, then and you didn't leave your wishes clearly, then the people who are alive can decide for you. They can move you 5 times, they can move you 3 times, and as long as they are doing it with all the consent of all the family members and with court orders, there is no bar. The only difference is if a person left a will and clearly stipulated that I'm to be buried here, then that person, and especially if there is no contest as to his or her ownership of that land, then that will cannot be changed. It means that any transfer of that person's remains will be in violation of his or her will, which is illegal.
With the increasing cases of exhuming of the bodies and relocation of the remains of the deceased, there is need to ascertain the rights of the deceased.
Deceased people don't have any rights, especially after death. The only rights that arise to a deceased person are where the deceased left a will. So if you die without a will, then the only rights that accrue to you are what the law says. And there is a high tendency for people to decide. For instance, where you are buried, how you are buried is a matter of what the other people have decided, but not you. So the best rights that can accrue to a deceased person is if that person has left what they want in writing. Then that one, as long as it's valid, it will be fulfilled. So when a person has expressed what they want to do in death, then their will is supposed to be fulfilled to the letter. And those are the biggest rights that accrue to a deceased person. If a person dies without a will, then or if a person leaves a will which is not valid under the law, then that person is treated like one who died intestate or who died without a will, and that is just a matter of the law, what the law says in such a person. And that we've seen in different occasions. Some matters have even gone to court where people dispute what the dead person said. All that is because there was no valid will. We saw it in the deceased Supreme Court judge. We saw it in the deceased advocate Bob Kasango, where court has guided that where a person dies without a will, then one, their wishes in as far as they can be discerned, or the next of kin, who could be the widow or the widower, and then the children.
The law on exhumation emphasizes that one must have a license and the activity must be done within a year with the watch of the environmental health officer who ensures procedures are complied with when exhuming the remains of the deceased.